Okay. All right. Welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay here. Again, want to welcome everyone. We spoke last week about blessings. Spoke about blessings and obligatory blessings for non-Jews. And now we're going to speak. About a hot topic. We really do this as part of controversial issues. We've done it before, and that is non-Jews learning Torah. They're allowed to learn Torah. They're not allowed to learn Torah. What types of Torah, if they learn it, are they liable for a death penalty? Does it mean superficial learning, in depth? What can be studied? So this is really kind of a crucial class because it addresses a lot of fundamental issues that I think a lot of people very much misguided on. I always say a little piece of knowledge is kind of dangerous. Why do I say a little piece of knowledge? Because people take this knowledge and run with it, and they go haywire with it, and they think they know, a lot about many things, when the reality is the main thing they don't know. So, obvious question on the floor is there a mitzvah for non-Jews, for Noahides to learn Torah? So what's the simple answer? No. They don't have an obligation to learn Torah. But, as there's always the but, and that is, we have to clarify. We have to clarify what that means. First of all, we have to examine Jews who learn Torah, and the obligation for Jews. Then we can see about non-Jews. So not all mitzvahs apply to Jews at all times. Some will apply time in the temple, some will apply to a Kohen, some to a Levi, some to men, to women. So not all things apply at all times. Except every Jew's got an explicit command to study the entire Torah and all its mitzvahs. Even if you work, you got to find time to learn, right? For a Jew, you have to be what we call kovei itiv. You have to find time to learn, the morning, the night, whatever it is. Question is, how far does that go for a non-Jew? What do we see? There's no command in the Torah for non-Jews to learn Torah. But how are they going to learn what to do for themselves? That'd be an obvious question. They're not obligated to learn, or they shouldn't learn. They're not going to know what to do. And I would say, tongue-in-cheek, there are people out there, quote-unquote, know how to learn. They still don't know what to do. You got to be careful where you get information from, obviously. So we find that the Noahide laws restrict non-Jewish study of Torah. And they're prohibitions. What non-Jews are allowed to do, not allowed to do. Now, so when we look at this, we got three things. First of all, what Noahide laws restrict non-Jews from studying? First question. Second question is, what Jewish law restricts Jews from teaching? And the positive aspects of non-Jewish Torah mentioned in the sources. Now, first question is, obligatory or praiseworthy, or is it prohibited? Is learning Torah for a non-Jew? What do we say? So what's the main source? Main source is a.Sanhedrin 59a. We're going to look at it in its entirety. Then we're going to break it down. We're going to break it down line by line. Right? So, Rabbi Yochanan says, a non-Jew delves into Torah, liable for death penalty. Well, it sounds pretty straightforward. As it says, the Torah is commanded through Moses as an inheritance to the children of Israel. Very specific. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4. It's an inheritance to who? Jews. Non-Jews. Some non-Jews think they can learn whatever they want. Okay, they're misguided. It's an inheritance for Jews. Right? And not for non-Jews. There's a question, okay, if that's true, why is this prohibition not included explicitly in the 7 laws? If you tell me the 7 laws, can't use God's name in vain, blasphemy, don't murder, don't kill, all these things, don't do idolatry, the law courts. Why not tell me they're not allowed to, they're not allowed to learn Torah? That'd be an obvious question. One answer is, when it says inheritance, it prohibits non-Jews from delving into Torah. Why? Because it's stealing. Oh. Why is it called stealing? Because it's something that doesn't belong to them. Now, stealing we're going to have to clarify. Normally, if you steal something, a person takes money from somebody illegally. That's stealing. Here, where's the stealing? Now we're going to have to deal with it. What aspect of stealing? What's the simple explanation? Simple explanation, the verse tells me it's inheritance to Jews. And non-Jews want to take part of it. Too bad. It's not yours. You're taking something that doesn't belong to me. Or let's say better, doesn't belong to you. And if it doesn't belong to you, what does that mean? And you take it, and you use it, you're taking something that doesn't belong. That we'd say in the vernacular stealing. Second explanation. The word for inheritance should be read as betrothed. Betrothed. Same word. Same root of the word. Therefore, a non-Jew studies Torah is considered having committed adultery with a betrothed woman. Now, what's the obvious question? Taking a little bit out of context. That's what it means, but you want to tell me it's like adultery? I have to see. The other rabbis challenge his teaching. From a statement from a brisa, i.e. a statement of oral law, heralding of equal authority to the mission. So what's the challenge? It comes along with a.Meiri. a.Meiri says the following. a.Meiri says that from where do we know, even if a non-Jew delves into Torah study, it's like the high priest, like the Kohen Gadol. How do I know? Because Torah tells me, the Adam, a man, shall keep them and live through them. Right, Leviticus chapter 18, verse 19. The verse does not say a Kohen, Levi, or Yisrael shall do and live through them, but rather a man. Who's a man? Anybody. Well, good question today. Who's considered a man? Or who's considered a woman? We're not going to go there. But it's ambiguous. It says a man. Could mean anybody. Doesn't have to mean a Jew. Prula doesn't say Jew. Doesn't say Kohen or Levi either. So the answer to the resolution is that there in the Bride, what a Rebbe may referring to, he's referring to a non-Jew who studies the 7 mitzvahs. So therefore, delving into 7 mitzvahs or learning about them is okay. What's Rabbi Yochanan talking about? That is forbidden, gets death penalty. So a non-Jew studies mitzvahs and Torah have no application to him. Oh, this is not going to be politically correct. Right? We're not going to get politically correct here. Because there are people out there, I could quote them, but I'm not going to waste my time. Right? But there are people out there that I can study anything. I can even study oral law. That applies to me. Or maybe, let's say better, doesn't apply to me. There are people who tell you that. Someone tells you that, you run. Right? So what's Rabbi Yochanan referring to? Let's make clear. Someone who studies Torah mitzvah has no connection whatsoever. So why are you studying it? You're going to say, I don't want to be like a Jew. Very good. So why are you studying it? You get these feminists. The feminists want to learn Gemara. Women want to learn Gemara. Right? What's the simple answer why they can't learn Gemara? Because the Talmud says it's not a good thing for them to do. Right? So what's the obvious question? If you want to learn the Talmud, and the Talmud says it's not a good thing to do, why would you learn it? Good question. Oh, the rabbi's this, the rabbi's that. No. They're telling you it's not beneficial to you. It's not going to help your soul. You're not going to reach potential that way. But I want to do it anyway. Doesn't make sense. Because if it's not good for you, why do you want to do it? Good question. So what's the proposition now? Rabbi Yochanan said, non-Jew delves into Torah's liable for a death penalty, as it says Torah's commanded through Moses, as an inheritance of the children of Israel. For Jews, not for non-Jews. Okay, now let's analyze. So what does the Gemara say? The Gemara makes a statement and then uses a Torah source as proof. Right, that's Deuteronomy, I think. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4. Now, in general, propositions are either supported by logic or a verse, or a scriptural verse. Rabbi Yochanan comes along, quotes Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 4. That's the source. All non-Jewish Torah study is prohibited. Finished. So then we ask the question, or the question was asked, so why is it not mentioned the 7 laws? Why should it not be mentioned the 7 laws? Not allowed to study Torah. Now, the Gemara seems a little bit surprised over here. Because this prohibition of learning Torah is so severe, you get death penalty. Death penalty? What's the obvious question? The obvious question is, if you get death penalty, why is it not mentioned the 7 laws? If it's so severe, tell me it's one of the 7 laws. Like adultery. You know, it's like setting up law courts. Like idolatry. Doesn't mention it. Very strange. So, the Gemara explains, even though it's not specifically listed, it's derived. It's part of the Noahide laws that are derived. Because one answer is, we said that it's an inheritance which prohibits non-Jews from delving into Torah. Why? They're taking something that does not belong to them. That's stealing. So, the Gemara gives an explanation. So the Torah, when the Torah says that it's an inheritance, it's telling us who has the right. Who has the right to study Torah in general? Jews. Only Jews. Non-Jews, not allowed. Seemingly not allowed. If they take something that's not theirs, they misappropriate it. What's the punishment? Sorry, what are they guilty of? Theft. They're taking something that doesn't belong to them. Second explanation, that the word for inheritance should be as betrothed or betrothed. Right? A non-Jew studies Torah is considered as committed adultery with a betrothed woman. Now, in this case, in Pesachim 49b, the word morasha, which means inheritance, can also be read morasha betrothed. You can learn it either way. Or you can learn it both ways. So now comes along answer number 1 and number 2. Telling me the prohibition of non-Jewish Torah study not recorded as standalone prohibition. Why? Because either answer places it conceptually under an existing category of prohibition. That's why it's not mentioned. What category does it come under? You tell me it's not mentioned one of the 7 laws. You're right, but it comes under either theft or sexual immorality. You'll say, come on, it's a little bit far-fetched. Is it really theft? Is it really telling me it's like sexual immorality? But it comes under that case. But it's kind of difficult to say. Now we're going to see. Because even though we have a prohibition over here, a proposition, what's Rabbi Yochanan's claim of blanket prohibition of Torah study for non-Jews is contradiction. It's a contradiction. A lot of times the Talmud will bring up a contradiction of someone who says something and say, hey, how can that be true? That for sure can't be true. I have a contradiction. So the other rabbis challenge this teaching from a Praiseworthy, right, as we said before. What Rabbi a.Meiri said, how do we know? Even a non-Jew delves into Torah study. It's like the high priest, where it's written, Adam, a man shall keep them and live through them. Doesn't say going Levi Yisrael, etc. It says a man. Who's a man over here? Right? It could be a non-Jew. So therefore, the word Adam can refer to mankind. It can refer to a man. It can refer to humanity. The first man, Adam Arishon, right? Adam and Eve. depending on context or usage. So you have to see how it's used. I always hated that answer. Right? You'll see it in context. Oh, I know, I want to know not. No, it'll come up, you'll understand it in context, which is true, but it's kind of frustrating. You have to think about it. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? Right? But when it comes up enough in context, you see what it means. Comes on, a.Meiri argues. What does Adam mean? Jew and non. No difference. Right? No difference. So what does the proof here tell me? It tells me all mankind can benefit from Torah. Who's part of mankind? Non-Jews. So the comparison of a non-Jew delves into Torah with the high priest. I learned from Shem, son of Noah. Shem was a leading scholar of the Noahide laws in his time. In praise as a priest of God on high. Genesis chapter 14, verse 18. And who is Melchizedek? Rashi says was Noah's son Shem. So, the Talmud over here, what's the question? How do we square Rabbi Yochanan's derivation of the prohibition of non-Jewish Torah study with the contradiction of Rabbi Meir that gives an endorsement and he says it's okay? So, one answer is, what does the Brisa tell me? Who's Rabbi Meir referring to? A non-Jew studies the 7 mitzvahs. That's okay. The Yochanan is referring to a non-Jew studies mitzvahs that have no application to him at all. That answers. Do not make it a blanket statement. Non-Jews can never study Torah. They can study what applies to them. Oh, what about things that don't apply to them? Things that don't apply to them, they can't study. That's the way it sounds. Now, the conclusion of the Talmud is often the case, is that Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Meir are not arguing, but they're teaching 2 different sides of the same coin. What's that? According to Rabbi Yochanan, non-Jews to study areas of Torah not apply to them, liable to death, penalty. And Meir holds no. Non-Jews study parts of Torah which do apply to them are comparable to Shem, a priest of God. So, the reality is, they're really not arguing. They're talking about 2 different things. The non-Jews not only are allowed to study those portions of Torah essential to their practice, and faith as Noahides, but areas that are pertaining to Jews are prohibited. Right? That seems pretty clear. They're talking about 2 different things. So it's not just a blanket statement, it's always forbidden. Not true. And what? Now, there's another issue over here. And that is, are they really liable for death penalty? Now, for a non-Jew to get death penalty for studying Torah, big problem. Right? Again, what was the Gemara bothered by? And Rabbi Yochanan claims death is the apparent penalty for non-Jewish Torah study. Obvious question. If it's so severe, why is it not mentioned in the 7 Noahide laws? Well, what's the answer? It is part of the Noahide laws. Either we learn it out from theft or sexual immorality. Okay, that was the answer. So that is going to explain how it fits into the Noahide laws and why it's not mentioned as one of the Noahide laws. But there's still the original question is still intact. Why is it not mentioned explicitly? In other words, if it's such a severe prohibition, I understand. You want to say it's a derivative of theft, things that don't apply to them, sexual immorality. That's not a simple explanation. That answers the question. But why aren't the Noahide laws, why doesn't it state explicitly? Tell me that they get death penalty for learning Torah. And that's one of the laws. Not mentioned. Not mentioned. Because if it's something as serious as death penalty, it should not be learned by derivation or implication. It should be learned explicitly. Why are you telling me I learned it out from this, I learned it out from that? Tell me a source. Tell me a Torah source. That's forbidden. Finished. I don't have to come on to anything else. Oh, I learned it from this, and it's like that, and that. Forget it. Tell me a Torah source. Now we mentioned another problem is the description of non-Jewish Torah study as theft. Now, theft is something very specific. What is theft? You take something that is of tangible property. Non-Jewish Torah study does not result in that. What did I take? What did the non-Jews take? You can take, they misappropriated something that doesn't apply to them, okay. But that mean they took something physically? No. In such a case, no loss of property. Can't even try the case. Go into rabbinical court, they're going to laugh. You're going to say, so what's the case? You have no case. Nothing. The non-Jewish Torah studies compared to adultery, you never tried adultery. Why not? Adultery never happened. So therefore, death penalty can't be administered to a non-Jew learning Torah based on what we said before. So if that's the case, comes on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan tells us they're going to get the death penalty for what? Why does he tell us that? It's not possible to get the death penalty. Now comes on the Rambam. Also had an issue. You look at Hilchos Malachim chapter 8, halacha 10. What does the Rambam say? Moshe gave over the Torah and the mitzvahs only to who? Jews, to Israel. In inheritance to the children of Israel. But it's also permitted for anyone who wants to convert. Non-Jews, how are they going to learn? Torah mitzvahs, they're not allowed to learn Torah. It's kind of silly. You have to be allowed to learn Torah. Then the Rambam says, chapter 9, verse 10, in the laws of kings, Hilchos Malachim, and non-Jew learns Torah, obligated for the death penalty. What's he allowed to learn? Only 7 mitzvahs. If he learned Torah, kept Shabbos, took on new mitzvahs. Interesting, take on Shabbos. The Rambam says, clear, non-Jews, forget about Shabbos. What do? You beat him, punish him, inform him that he deserves that. Okay. Do we kill him? No. We don't kill him. So even though the Rambam tells us the non-Jew is obligated for death, we don't put him to death. It's so severe, that's what we should do, even though we don't do it. Now the other commentaries, the a.Meiri, the David, the Mishnah commentary, the Rambam, all other commentaries explain a non-Jew studies Torah is in fact liable to the death penalty. But where does that death penalty come from? Does it come from heavenly court? Come from the a.Sanhedrin? No. It comes from the hands of heaven, not a human court. Now we're going to see. Now we're going to discuss another time. Right? But so why does Rabbi Yochanan say what he says? Because of the severity of it. He's not going to get death penalty in a human court. Because he can't try him for anything over here. But he'll get death penalty from heaven. Now we also have to understand, when we're talking about Lilmod HaTorah, learning Torah, study of Torah. Doesn't mention study of Torah. Right? What does the Talmud say? It says, She'oisek b'Torah. What does oisek mean? Asek, like a business. That means do it in depth. Right? So now the question is going to be, what's the difference between delving into Torah and merely learning Torah? What about Torah for the sake of prohibition? Does it mean written Torah or oral Torah? What about Kabbalah? What about Medrash? How far does this go? Goes on the a.Meiri. a.Meiri, opinion's not always so easy. But the a.Meiri summarizes like this. What's the prohibition? It's only if it's involved, not for the sake of keeping mitzvahs. The learning Torah is mental gymnastics, but not for the sake of anything else. Not to keep mitzvahs. Like an ultra-Orthodox student, or like Rav Moshe Schneider, my Rebbe's Rebbe would say, a former student. learning like mathematics, nothing to do with my life, but only because he deserves the path of the wisdom of the written and oral Torah. If a person's learning the path of the wisdom of the written and oral Torah, that's a problem. So what's the a.Meiri telling us? Delving means learning deeply. To fathom wisdom. Second thing is, delving applies both written and oral Torah. Third thing, delving is permitted for the sake of the Noahide laws, but not learning any other areas of Torah. Apply to one thing, not another. So therefore, the basic, non-delving learning, even if areas not relevant to Noahide, should be okay. That's what it seems to come up. Right? Not so simple. Definitely not so simple here. Now, we have to go further, right, and understand what's going on here. What's the difference between if I learn it or I delve into it more? So here, delving and learning for the purpose of Torah laws explained by Rabbi Chaim Coffman in his work, a.Machaneh. What does he do? He divides Torah study into two categories. You got Mishnah, you have Gemara commentary on the Mishnah. Mishnah and Gemara together make up the Talmud. Now, there are actual texts called Mishnah and Gemara, right? We mentioned that before. But the categories of Mishnah and Gemara here refer to categories of Torah study, not just in and of themselves. Under the general category of Torah study, which over here, we're going to refer to texts of the Mishnah and Gemara, capital letters, right? And the categories, lower letters, lowercase. Right? So Mishnah and Gemara, again, can mean Torah itself, Torah study. But it could be their other categories over here. Now, the category of Mishnah really means to learn. Right? Is anything composed for the sake of basic knowledge? Right? Anything for the sake of basic knowledge, whether it's oral or written law. What does Gemara refer to? Derivation of laws. Right? Exploration of deeper meaning, structure within the text. Right? Takes it apart, dissects it, so to speak. Mishnah is just telling you, Rabbi Yochanan says like this, Rabbi a.Meiri says like that, and that's it. They don't delve into explanations and meanings and structure. So, all study of Mishnah, since it's very basic, it's okay for non-Jews. It's okay for Noahide. Delving into it more, derivation of laws, exploration, deeper meanings, forbidden. That you're not allowed to do. Also, the method of studying material. What am I allowed to study or not? Right? Really, they're the same thing. For example, a person studies the Torah text using the methods of the Talmud, delving into depth, or simply studying the text of the Talmud. Right? You just go with simple explanation, not delving into it. Both constitute Gemara. That's derivation. That's delving into it. Why? Because they both do the same thing. And both things are forbidden. In other words, even if I take Torah, which is permissible for non-Jews to learn, but I delve into it in a very deep way, that's forbidden. And at the same time, delving into the Mishnah the same way, also forbidden. So now, $1.5 million question. What's a non-Jew allowed to study? Nothing! No, just kidding. What are they allowed to study? They can study Tanakh. 24 books of Tanakh, Torah, the writings, the what do you call it? The prophets, etc. So that we have many sources for. The Rambam writes, a non-Jew may even read from a Torah scroll. A non-Jew can even learn commentaries on the text, provided, it's always a but, provided, purpose of commentaries to explain the simple meaning of the text. Rashi, the Ramban, that should be okay. Unless the Ramban goes into other things, Kabbalah, whatever. But simple explanation should be okay. But if you're going deeper, right, which is the intent of the text, using methods similar to Talmudic study, that would be forbidden. Such classic commentaries as the Sifri, Mechilta, the Midrashim, therefore prohibited for study. They go in depth. That's all about derivation. Also, learning Kabbalah. That should be obvious. Midrashic interpretation of Torah, unless they pertain to Noahide. But again, Kabbalah, if you don't know the basics, it's like trying to study calculus without geometry or truth. Not going to go. Or algebra. Not going to go. You can't run before you learn how to crawl. There are people out there, they're running, they're jumping, they're, all over the place. Like Mexican jumping beats, all over the place. This, that. To quote the Indian chief in the movie The Frisco Kid, I read their holy Torah. I didn't understand a single word. That's what you get. You want to tell me you're learning Kabbalah? You don't even know the Aleph page. You can probably barely read Hebrew. Come on. Doesn't apply. But Kabbalah is a midrashic interpretation. So you're not learning the Kabbalistic aspect, but you learn it like a medrash. Off limits. But it'd be off limits anyway, in general. But, unless it would apply over here. Any section of Torah literature composed for the sake of basic knowledge, whether oral or written law, is okay. That's like Mishnah. Therefore, the Mishnah Torah by the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, permissible. Why? Because you're not delving into it. You're just learning laws and conclusions. You're not getting into reasons and methodology. That's Gemara. That's a different issue. Right? So the commentaries, even if you could read them, would be forbidden. Same reason. Now, the Noahides make blessings on Torah study. A Jew does. There's no commandment of Torah study for Noahides. We mentioned. So therefore, a non-Jew doesn't need to study. Right? He never needs to study Noahide laws. So how's he going to learn if he doesn't? Okay. The only obligation is to keep them. So if you get someone to teach you, you don't need to study yourself. Right? But obviously, how are you going to know what to do if you don't study them? So by logic, by necessity, Torah study is part of Noahism. Alright? That seems pretty clear. They have to know what to do. How they can know what to do? Non-Jews in the process of conversion. What? They can't learn Torah? They can't learn Torah, they'll never convert. But going beyond just study and delving into the obligation, Noahide compared to a high priest. That is no question. Delving into it, right, is a voluntary thing. Well, basic study is necessary. Either is an obligation, which I need a blessing. Right? It's commanded us to study Torah. It was commanded me, to delve into Torah. Right? The blessing is la'asok b'divrei Torah. La'asok means an asik, a business. I learned Torah like a business. Delve into it more. Non-Jews don't have that. So therefore, they don't make a blessing over Torah study. But they get tremendous reward for delving into it. So if they want to learn Jewish law, just the give and take of what they're, what's allowed to be done, not allowed to be done, that should be okay. Right? That should definitely be okay. Going into the commentaries, different issue. Different issue. So, what do we have over here? We mentioned a number of times, we'll continue to mention. And that is, they should not overstep their boundaries. Could they learn maybe certain parts of Talmud that relates to damages? Could be. As long as they don't learn it in depth. Certainly if they don't learn it in depth. Right? That might be okay because it applies to them. But the more basic thing. See, if you tell a non-Jew you can't learn this, what do? They want to learn it. Right? They say, oh, but I can't learn the real thing. Well, what do we say over here that a person can learn? Torah, prophets, writings, commentators of Rashi, the Ramban, Kuyaka, Ibn Ezra, Barbanel, text of the Mishnah, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, and plenty what to learn. Musar, ethics, Jewish philosophy, plenty what to learn. Oh, but I want to learn this. I want to learn what's totally forbidden. Thank you very much. Right? Well, what's the reason? You tell them they can't do it. Once you tell them they can't do it, that's exactly what they want to do. But the whole point is they have to learn things that apply to them. That they can learn in depth. Things that don't apply to them, and that's what other people want to learn. Things that don't apply to them, which boggles the mind in a certain way. Because I don't want to be a Jew. Not interested in converting. Why are you learning this? No, I'm allowed to. Catch 22. Major catch 22. So, learning things in depth that don't apply, forbidden. Learning things in depth, even do apply, also an issue. Right? Learning in depth is the issue. Even if it's something basic. Non-Jews need to learn what they need to know. So therefore, delving into it, not going to get them that far. They have to know the basic laws, what to do. But there's plenty for them to learn. Just mention a whole number of things. If I give classes on any of this, I could be here for the next 250 years, keeping people busy. Oh, but I want to learn it. Forget it. Look at all these things you can learn. Plenty of things you can learn. No, but I want to learn this. They get these feminists. I want to learn this. Okay. I want to climb up the Empire State Building. Learn how to fly. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen. The limitations what we can do. You cannot, as Coffman would say, and I'm going to patent this, so anyone who does, I'm going to sue you. And that is that you cannot turn the Torah into a pretzel. The Torah is all like plastic, man. You cannot just turn it into a pretzel and do whatever I want, when I want. There's limitations. Jews are not non-Jews. They're not, if God wanted anyone to be Jewish, they would have been. No offense. They didn't make everyone Jewish. So therefore, there are limitations. But I want to do this. I think it's ironic. Some non-Jews say, yeah, I keep shopping to this level, to that level. But you rejected the Torah. The Gemara says clear in the Avodah Zarah, 2b to 3a. God went to all the non-Jews. They all rejected the Torah. Now you come along generations later and say, I want Shabbos. What do you mean you want Shabbos? Your great-great-great-great-grandparents rejected it. You want Shabbos, convert. No, but I want to convert. I can't move. My wife doesn't want to convert. Whatever. But it doesn't belong to you. Doesn't the Torah say it's a sign between me and you? God says, me and you, the Jewish people, but I want in. Well, tough noogies. My Rebbe would say, go eat kugel. Doesn't apply to you. The chutzpah. You're going to come and take something that belongs to us that's an inheritance for the Jews? Think again. No, I'm not doing that. Of course you're doing that. You want a part that doesn't apply. When you get off saying, I get the part that doesn't apply to me. Right? That I can understand absolutely is theft. I don't care if you don't take something tangible. You're taking something that doesn't belong. And if it doesn't belong, get the hell out. You don't deserve it. You rejected God. You kicked him in the face. Say, I don't want to. Okay? That's what your great-grandparents did. Fine. So, person wants to go through the process, let him convert. You don't want to convert? It's over. That's what we say in Boston. It's all over. Because you rejected it. Your great-great-grandparents rejected it. And now you're coming back. You're reconnecting to the Noahide laws. It's beautiful. But you want something that doesn't belong, you're a thief. You're a thief. Not in the real sense. You're not taking anything. But you're misappropriating something that doesn't belong to you. And that's the point. I see this often enough, and it boggles the mind. It doesn't apply, so why do it? To get these ultimate feminists. Then they say, I'm going to learn Talmud anyway, even if these, women-hating rabbis say it's not good for me. So why are you learning it? Why in the world are you learning it? They think you're not going to reach your potential. I know better. But they're telling you. They're telling you it's no good for you. It's not going to help you reach your potential. I don't care. I want to do it. Ain't brains, Poe. I have brains over here. They're doing what they want to do. Doing what you want to do is not Torah. And if you're going to listen to the rabbis and what they say, they're telling you not to do it. Why do it? Why take something that doesn't belong to you? It doesn't matter. I still want a part of it. Okay, so go to conversion. No. So you're stuck. But there are plenty of other things a person can learn. Plenty. Keep you busy, I told you, for 250 years. Not a problem. Going through the prophets properly, the writings properly, the Torah properly. Come on. In the last 10 years, I started from the book of Genesis. Right? I give a class once a week, 2 hours. I'm holding my Leviticus chapter 16. I haven't gone very far. I think I've been on verse 2 for the last 4 parts, 8 hours. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of depth. No question. But I want to learn this. I want to be king of the world. I'm not. I want to be a lot of things. You got to stick to what the Torah says. Right? You stick to what the Torah says, you get a portion of the world. But don't overstep those boundaries. Learning in depth doesn't apply. You got to know what to do. You have to know how it applies to a person. And there are plenty of people out there who have no clue how it applies. They think they do. They talk a big game, but it's a bluff. It's all a bluff. Anyway, I digress here. Yeah, any questions on any of that? While making a blessed on Torah study, what can be studied, why in depth is a problem, and the whole shebang. Any questions on any of that? Or any general questions? Or either I blew out everyone's eardrums, or whatever the case is. All right, if there are no other, if there are no questions, then so I'm going to stop here. We'll continue. We'll continue with this, I guess, next week. If anyone has any questions, feel free. You can shoot me an email. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. I'm going to wish everyone a good middle of the day, almost end of the day for me, and everyone have a great rest of the week.